So, thank you everyone for joining. This is the first, it's Ajari speaking here. This is the first of our 8-part webinar series, all around meeting today's new world challenges. I'm going to let Mike run through how we're going to run these and the sections that we're going to run these in. But really, we've done this for our customers to get some support and build a community out where our customers can ask as many questions as they want around what's going on at the moment and how we try to alleviate some of the pressures that's been put on IT at the moment. We've got some content, and today is all around what are the challenges that we've immediately faced with turning into a remote workforce. And Justin Edhouse, our CTO, is going to go through some of those shortly as well. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the Teams chat. Feel free to put the question or put that you've got a question, and after we'll go through them. Any that we can't get through, I'll personally take a note and make sure we get them answered. If not directly to you after, we'll get them answered on the webinar on Friday. So these are going to run every Wednesday and Friday at 11 a.m. So without further ado, Mike Curtis, I'm going to pass over to you, if that's okay.
Yep, lovely. Thanks, Ajay. Great stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm just taking on there from Ajay's intro. We felt that we wanted to do something to help people, just from the perspective of connecting and building a community and sharing some of our own experience, and then thinking about what we could do through this period of uncertainty to create a little bit of structure. So we came together and we thought, okay, what phases are we likely to experience going through this journey? And we said, okay, we're all going to react, and we believe we're in what we've called that reacting phase, so resolving our early issues, and that's where we're obviously going to center our focus today. So some people have started from better positions than others. So some users are much more familiar with home working, something that we'll talk about ourselves in terms of the structure that we had for snow days and the like. But other organizations from a user's perspective have no familiarity with home working. So what challenges are people facing there, and how might there be some help with that? Beyond that sort of early adoption phase that people are sort of rushing to a home working structure, what's that led to? So one of the things we're saying is no bed desks, so permanency in the environment, and we'll talk about that on the latter phases. So home working environment, really important topic, and what we're doing there. So what we think will happen then is we'll need to remove a little bit of risk from that reacting phase. You're thinking in a blinkered way about a challenge and a problem in front of you, and people are reacting to that currently. So how do we swap that to a more proactive focus? What can we do? Some advice and guidance for people. Things like, we've sold a lot of laptops to people. Those laptops have gone out without encryption. So what data should you store locally? What messaging should be you delivering to your end users to say how to work in that home environment in an absence of a secure environment? What things can be relaxed from a security perspective, but what things might have to be enhanced? Where are the risks around resilience? We've got home broadband. Are there other connection methods? What can people do? How can we help in those areas? What sort of messaging, again, things should we be thinking about to de-risk this environment for people? What back-end infrastructure changes can we make? How can we help people in that more proactive sense? Then what we thought about was, okay, moving this into a more protracted opportunity and looking at where this might go, we're taking a bit of a paradigm shift, and the home working environment we could be in for an extended period of time. So you've got your initial connectivity, you've created your initial home working environment, but how can we improve connectivity? And I think a lot of people would have seen these reports in the past, but if you haven't, pound for pound in terms of infrastructure, the more money you spend on desktop real estate, as in monitor space, for instance, the more productive you make people. So if you're working from your laptop now, currently using your laptop keyboard, for instance, you'll probably realize a mouse, a keyboard, and a monitor will actually help you a lot. But what other things can we do to create that productivity gain? So access to applications, changes in our infrastructure, working practices and patterns. What can we do to create a better productivity stance in the future? And then right at the back end, the longer term thinking. So if we, as we believe this is a bit of a paradigm shift now, it's you've opened the genie's bottle, people have been given the means to be able to work from home. It's unlikely that people will want to go back to the way that we worked before in many cases. So what can we do now that helps lend to a longer term thinking process whereby we create this new paradigm and that becomes the new norm? And that can be things as we'll talk about, equipment, for instance. If you've gone from a desktop PC under your desk to new laptop infrastructure, what do you do with all of that equipment? What might that mean in terms of the way you set strategy and procure equipment in the future? How do you reset the way people work? What productivity tools might you be using in the future and the like? So we've tried to start this early enough for it to be relevant to people, but it's fair to say we've kind of tried to react at the pertinent point in time. So we welcome your feedback. We want you to feed in with questions, and we want that to help shape those sessions as we go forward in the coming weeks ahead. So that's enough from me. I'll hand over to Justin Edhouse now, carry on with the rest of the presentation.
Thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm gonna start by setting the scene a little bit. I'm going to talk about the challenges that we as a company have faced. So we're going to go a little bit through how we worked previously until this, what that's starting to look like now, what the challenges are. Now, I know you're all going to have different challenges, but there are going to be some challenges that we face together. Some of them we can fix, some of them maybe we can't. I don't mind talking about my challenges, as I think it's just a great place to begin. It's scene setting for the rest of the events that we're going to be running, and I'm hoping that if any of this rings true, we've found some solutions, then maybe that'll lead you to some things as well. So let's talk about what our office looked like before this. I would say it was we're not different to many offices, to be honest. We encouraged that work environment, that collaboration environment in the office. Most of our people were inside the building working on systems. We were a little far ahead, perhaps, in that we'd really dropped the desktops some while ago. This was as an end result of, like Mike said, snow days and things like that. Plus, our younger users definitely wanted to be empowered to work slightly differently. So we had a little bit more mobility in place already, which put us in a lucky position. But we also had dual screens, and there was a culture to it all, which I think was important, which led to most people wanting to be inside the office. Of course, now you change that to where we sit now, and our office pretty much looks like that. Everybody's got something slightly different. That it comes with new challenges, but they are coping. You can see they've all got a fairly unique approach to their working space at home. But we as a business have to ensure that we get the functionality and productivity that we need out of that, and we help them deal with all the little challenges of the environment. So moving on to some of the challenges that we faced, I guess the first and most obvious one was the shift in network loads. So everyone was inside, they had a great gigabit network, really good Wi-Fi, local resources, everything ran smoothly. And we had a small number of people on the outside that were meetings and like I said, the occasional snow day where it got a little bit more challenging. But it was always a small percentage of numbers for a small percentage of the time. So now it's flipped around and it's everybody all of the time. We immediately bumped up against some issues which we hadn't factored in. ISDN channels was a good example. We had our normal amount of inbound calls, in fact, an increase in inbound calls because people were dealing with laptop requirements and infrastructure changes. Plus, we also were doing transfers to mobile phones. And so we simply ran out of ISDN channels. Now, that wasn't too hard to fix because well, we've got Teams, we've got WebEx, we've got Jabber. We had given everybody soft phones. We did that a long time ago to enable more agile working. So we educated our users and asked them to use their mobile phones for outbound to release the strain a little bit on the inbound calls. And we asked them to use wherever possible internet-based systems to alleviate that. So that wasn't so bad, but again, it's just one of those things. We didn't expect this to happen, and you can't just order ISDN at all right now, to be honest. So a solution had to be found. There was another more significant challenge, which is more related to us as a group. We're 12,000 users across the European region. So actually, they're now all trying to go through VPN to try and get access to services, and that was a biggie for us because there's no way you can just suddenly switch that on. We did a pretty good job, but essentially we had to find alternate methods. So our answer to that problem was actually quite fast and a good response, and that's we published our Citrix over the internet and secured it via two-factor authentication. So there was no VPN gateway technology there. There was still security in place and very good security because Citrix itself is a security mechanism, and obviously secured by two-factor authentication meant that the gateway was secure. So this actually really allows us right now to have those 12,000 people all connected in centrally and then branching out to each individual country across our MPLS network. Really made a huge difference, that did. And also we also are quite mature on a cloud basis. So we have MS Teams, we have Cisco Jabber, WebEx, Office 365, and they're all secured by two-factor authentication, but they are internet based. So even if the VPN failed, even if the Citrix failed, we'd actually be quite functional. So that maturity, which I know not all companies are there yet, but utilizing the cloud effectively is going to be crucial moving forwards. The next challenge was not so easy to solve, and that's supporting users. Supporting users, yeah, it came as an interesting challenge because how people are in the office and the support their network that they get is not. For them, it's just natural. They'll talk to the people around them. They'll talk to their managers. They'll raise a support ticket. There's an awful lot of people in the office that can help them when they don't even know they've really got a big problem. Whereas you put them in the home environment where they're isolated from those people, and you see a different cat caught by the headlights type moment. And we experienced different methods of communication. So we were getting WhatsApps, we were getting texts, we were getting phone calls, we were getting Teams messages, we were getting Jabber messages. It was almost a sort of an initial panic. What we did there was just to redirect them to the service desk for one simple reason. That was just so we could start cataloging our problems effectively, and also alleviate some of the front end stresses. It takes a lot of time when you're dealing with all those communication methods. Once we'd actually cataloged all those different problems that are coming in and we saw themes coming in, we actually started getting proactive with it. And this brought enormous time to our IT guys because we published self-help guides that could give them answers without them needing to pick up the phone. The users felt empowered. They felt much more safe and secure that they could take care of their own requirements. And then the IT guys could get supporting other people with more difficult problems. So it might seem simple to some of you, but that empowering users to help themselves wherever possible was actually a big help during the early phases. I think the longer term of that is, of course, when people go, oh, I'm quite able to work from home now. I've got the right levels of support. I know how to fix things when broken. I think that bodes well for the future as well. We've got users that will want to continue working in this way, perhaps towards once all this is over and done with, and they're going to have the confidence and the knowledge and the training and the skills to do that if we keep providing them with the support they need. Moving on to application delivery, this was an interesting one. I was quite surprised by this one. We knew that some of our applications don't perform so well over VPN. The problem is that they're quite bandwidth intensive, and not everybody has the bandwidth to get a really good service. We'd already spun up a Citrix server for the UK to provide UK specific apps, some of them very primary to our operations. But that really was only built for the occasional user and the occasional snow day. It wasn't hardy in any way, shape or form. So we quickly jumped to it, realizing that was a challenge, and we spun up an extra bunch of Citrix servers. They're virtual. And then we realized we needed to manage the capacity across them and the availability. So we actually spun up a virtual load balancer as well. And here's the really surprising thing out of all of that. It didn't cost anything other than time. We did it inside of our virtualization space, so we've got data center licensing, and therefore we can use the unlimited VMs feature. And because the UK had a certain number of users concurrency, we could actually use a free load balancer provided by one of our partners, Kemp. Now that's free to everybody as well. So yeah, it's a straight download. Yes, there are some limits, but we found those limits were appropriate for our scenario going forwards. Yes, it took a bit of time. I think about 2.5 days to get absolutely right. It wasn't difficult, it's just a time-consuming thing. But out of all of it, that one took me by surprise because it was just actually really straightforward and low cost, and has given us a hardy solution which everyone can use really easily. The fun one is security. So security challenges, I think we've all got that in the back of our heads that there's going to be some challenges there. From a security standpoint, Bekla's pretty good. We have all our laptops have encryption on, we have endpoint protection. As you can tell, we use multi-factor authentication, we use physical VPN keys, we have firewalls at every entrance and exit of our networks. We're pretty good, but nonetheless, there are security challenges in this working from home. Passwords, for example. People changing passwords, rotating passwords too frequently can cause home workers challenges. If they get isolated from the network because they've changed a password and forgotten, then obviously that becomes a support burden. So there are certain things we'd suggest you do that can really help you. Think about your password policies, your group policies that you put in place, because most of us have built them around the concept of everyone being on the physical network, being close to support. Maybe extend out your password rotation policy a little bit so that maybe it carries them through this early part of working from home. I think those simple little things can reduce some of the problems that we see inside the service desk. There's also some other less obvious things. If you take our situation, our users have the protection of a proxy server and no direct access to the internet when their laptops inside of our network. When they're outside, the first thing they do to get to the network is connect to their Wi-Fi at home. That's got other PCs on, that's got kids on, that's got who knows what equipment inside of that environment. There is an increased threat there. So we should consider what endpoint protection we're using, our antivirus, what, we should increase the amount we're scanning the equipment. We should increase the frequency of the pattern downloads if relevant. And really, I think in general, review all your security policies, because it seems to be, for most users, including ourselves, built for an internal network. So I guess the last one, which is not an easy one and is still causing us issues right now. Yes, we've empowered our guys. The first thing we did when we realized that everybody had to go out and work from home is we did make sure that everybody, if they wanted it, if they didn't already have it, had that extra monitor, had that keyboard, had that mouse, the USB hub, so that it all connects together and they can interact in a productive manner at home. That's great, but there are other challenges that we're certainly experiencing a lot of, and that's the routers, for example, and ISPs. We've seen a number of ISPs suffer, including our own. Colt Telecom. They've seen huge increases, but most of the home class services have got so many people running with VPN that at 9 o'clock they start blocking VPN. Routers start falling over because they're not used to multiple people using VPN on the one network. So that's a really difficult one for our support teams to handle, and it's very much best endeavor. If we haven't got all the rest of our world buttoned up and people helping themselves, we wouldn't have the time at all. So we're doing our best, but as with most things, not all problems can be solved, and we have to say speak to your provider. Maybe they don't have passwords for their routers, and there's nothing we can do. So that, I think, is going to be a burden for as long as we're in this mode of operation, and one we're just going to have to grin and bear. But ultimately, we can't be responsible for their home products. If we had more time to react, maybe we'd consider swapping it out to something a bit more hardy and business-like. But without knowing how long this is going to go on and what the more permanent situation is going to be, I think that's a tough call to make. There is other things that you don't think of, and that's kids and wives all using up the bandwidth. The poor Wi-Fi because there's too many devices, or the microwaves on downstairs in the kitchen. I'm sure we're all sort of hearing some of that. As a business, we can't tell people to get their kids off. It's not possible. In fact, having the kids on surfing Netflix is going to help them work. So again, tough challenges. So all of it is around user education and making sure that support teams can educate people when they're phoning in with these problems, that the problems are not necessarily at this end. They could potentially be at the other end. So I think what we're saying here is that there are many challenges, and there are many ways of solving it as well. Those are some of my challenges. I think we've actually handled this pretty good. We had our support calls to a bare minimum within 2 days, and now we're just seeing the normal early morning challenges and some of the connectivity challenges that seem to remain. But I would love to hear from everybody on this call right now about some of the challenges they've faced, whether there's something that they would like our input on. That, that's what we're here for. That's what we're trying to do with these sessions. Whether anyone's already seen some of the challenges I've faced, I'd also love to hear that. But I'm going to hand back to Ajay now, and we'll have that Q&A session. If you want to ask me a question directly, please send it over to Ajay via the chat, and yeah, let's talk.